everybody, to Farm to School Procurement. We are going to cover a couple of topics today. So my name is Stacey Purslow. I coordinate the New Hampshire Farm to School program, and we have a couple of the other presenters today as well. Jeanne Pierce, who's the school nutrition director for the Exeter School District, and Colleen Stewart, who's works with the Food Alliance and Farm to School, and she's here representing the New Hampshire Food Hub Network. We're going to talk about the local food for local schools reimbursement bill that we're trying to get passed in New Hampshire, the local food for schools cooperative agreement, which is different, sounds the same, but they're different, which is some federal dollars that have come into the state. Then we're going to hear about food hubs and farm to school. And then finally, Jean's going to end talking about how she approaches farm to school. So I wanted to start with the local food for local schools reimbursement bill, which is, we actually introduced it to the last year's legislative session and obviously didn't pass. So we are back again this year, trying to get it passed. It was heard in the House Education Committee a couple of weeks ago. The House Education Committee voted, was it 10-10, 10-4, 10 against. So that means it passes through. So it passed through the House Education Committee with an ought to pass, but with no recommendation. So it's on to the House floor for a full House vote. And I'm not exactly sure when that is, but it'll probably be soon. So if you haven't heard of it, well, I hope you have, but if in case you haven't heard of it, it's a reimbursement program for schools who buy local food. It's for schools to participate in the National School Lunch Program, that get federal dollars to support those meals. And their request is that you spend $3,600 of those federal dollars on New Hampshire grown food, and then you would get $1,200 back from the state. So we're asking the state to fund it, to provide that bit of reimbursement. So it's an incentive program for more schools to participate in farm to school procurement around the state. And so we have specifics on what can be purchased, but it includes all kinds of locally grown and produced things. So proteins, dairy products, not fluid milk. So you can't just submit your HOOD receipts and get a reimbursement. But you could get other milk. You could get other dairy products, fruits and vegetables, lightly processed vegetables, cider, syrup, eggs, ground beef, fish, seafood, pork, honey. So includes everything that we can grow and produce in New Hampshire. So that's how the basics of it. In the bill also, it has support for a person that would be housed within the New Hampshire Department of Education Nutrition Services Department that would basically run the program, like work with schools and get the reimbursements done and that kind of thing. So we have, there's a lot of people across the state who support this, but then there's others who don't. And Rebecca White, who's here on the call, kindly set up a meeting with one of the House committee members to talk about what changes they wanted to see in the bill. They didn't really want to support a person in the DOE to oversee it. They thought, could it be done without this expensive person? They wanted to see it be more equitable, like $3,600 per school, $1,200 back. It varies across the state, right? We've got some really small schools and really big schools, and that's not quite equitable, but we knew that going in. We thought, let's just get this thing passed and then make it better later. So we know that. And also, our original bill last year offered tier purchasing. So if you bought not in New Hampshire, but from other New England states, it would count, but not as much. There's a good chance that that could go back in, which is great. Some of the education committees recognize that the food shed crosses state lines, that some school districts are even cross state lines. People buy, farmers grow here and sell there, or they grow there and sell here. So it, it makes total sense to me for that to be the case. So I would love to see that go back in. So I wanted to just talk further. If anybody wants to has any questions about it, what kind of needs would make it easy if you're a school food service director to implement this in your school. If anybody has any questions, you can just come off mute and ask us.
I have a question, Stacey. Last biennium, was it sorted to the education committee as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a choice in where, we get submitted to the state and they decide somehow, what committee it goes to. So this one sort of is either education or ag, and they decided it should go to the education committee. Any other questions? Okay, so if you're in New Hampshire and you want to support or oppose this bill, to put that out there, you can contact your local House legislator. So you'd want to, the person that lives in your community that represents you in the House. We're past the opportunity to contact the education committee directly, so you have to go to your local legislator. So the next item, so the Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement. So this is a federal program that all states had access to. We had to submit a proposal. All states had a pot of money set aside, and we just had to apply for it with a plan of how we were going to implement this program. So New Hampshire has, $560,000 available. New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, New Hampshire Farm to School, and the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture submitted this proposal. It had to be submitted by a state agency. So we submitted it through the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture. We were awarded the grant, but it had to go through another process of getting Executive Council approval, which happened last Wednesday. They just said yes, and so be it. So now we can begin to try to roll this out. So working with New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, we identified the highest need schools in the state. So those with the highest rates of free and reduced that are going to get first dibs on this money. We have $22 per student. So it's going to be based on free and reduced rates, and then $22 per student. So high need school districts like Manchester and Nashua are going to get lots of money. But even small rural schools have access to some of these funds. There is a little catch to it because it needs to be spent by October 31st of this year. So there's not a whole lot of time here to get it spent. So it's going to be used to purchase New Hampshire grown, raised, and harvested foods. Again, hood milk, not going to be eligible. You can buy proteins, which is a good buy, ground beef, fish, eggs, dairy. You can, again, like the bill, buy fruits, vegetables, maple syrup, honey, cider. You can try to forward contract, which is another option we can consider if it's going to be a challenge to get this money spent by that deadline. We're also going to include lightly processed foods. I have a shredded carrot and other carrot project going. There's a farm in New Hampshire that makes its own applesauce in little, individual cups. So that's going to be eligible. So that, again, the funds are going to be run through the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture. So a different agency than you might be used to working with. So there's going to be some purchase agreements. So the schools are not actually going to get the money. Nobody's cutting the schools a check for you to spend locally. It's going to be more of a credit situation. And we're going to be working mostly with the food hubs, some value-added producers, some farms. Maybe you already work with a farm. We can continue that relationship. But the farmers and the food hubs and anybody that's going to get paid through this money has to become a vendor through the Department of Agriculture. So there's some paperwork involved. So it was easier to do that because then, the schools would have to be set up as vendors to receive the money. So there's going to be, I think, less number of vendors required. So again, you can order, like, you'll know how much money you have to spend, and you can order through the food hubs or from the farmers that you have a relationship with already. And then the farmer that the food hub is going to be the one submitting for reimbursement to the Department of Ag, and they will get the money. So right now, New Hampshire Hunger Solutions is going to start the chore of contacting all, eligible schools that we've identified, to let them know about this, how much money they have, to make sure they want to participate in this. And then we'll see. So if there's a school district says, no, I don't want to do this, we'll work down the list of, slowly going from highest need to lower need schools. Again, funds need to be spent by the end of October 31st of this year. We're trying to figure out ways to not have that hard deadline so much. So forward contracting could be an option to extend procurement beyond the 31st. So basically you're committing the money, and the farmer, the food hub's committing to grow whatever you want. It's just that the payment mechanism is going to have to happen. I think the Department of Ag, even though there's a deadline here, they have like 30 or 60 days to get things finalized after that date. So the money, you can use it to buy food for the school breakfast program, school lunch program, after school snack, fresh fruit and vegetable program, or summer meals if it's a school run summer meals program. All of those programs are eligible for this funding. And there's going to be some sort of evaluation component. We're going to be obviously collecting data on sales, but other evaluation, like how did it go? What were the obstacles? What worked really well? All of those kinds of things we'll be collecting, which could be actually very influential if we can get our reimbursement bill passed. So this is sort of, this is a good opportunity to see how big farm to school stuff might actually work in the state. Because we haven't really had that, as school food procurement is can be particularly challenging. So if anybody has any questions about that, we'll pause and take some questions. I don't know exactly who's on the call right now, but we did have some people from out of state on the call. So maybe because every state could apply for these funds, and if you're from a state that has these, and let us know how it's working in your state. Or any general questions about this. Okay.
Oh,
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
Is there a cap per school or per vendor?
There is a cap. Well, there's not a cap per se. We took free and reduced lunch rates from pre-COVID school year. And then took a like a $20 or $22 per student rate and just multiplied it out. So there's a cap per school, not school district. So like this, schools in a school district each have a different rate of free and reduced. So like in a, say Exeter, as an example, although Jean's mad, she's not getting any money. There's the multiple schools and each one is going to have a different rate of free and reduced. So each school will have a different amount of money. Anyway, this for New Hampshire, I think, hopefully, it's probably not going to go smoothly as I imagine, but I think that we'll learn a lot and it will be helpful if and when we get our bill passed. All right, I'm going to toss it over to Colleen, who's going to talk about New Hampshire Food Hubs and the New Hampshire Food Hub Network.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacey. I think this kind of really flows well from what Stacey was just talking about, because the food hubs are going to be integral in that the cooperative agreement program. So as Stacey pointed out in introductions, I am not the Food Hub Network Manager. I work closely with Caitlin Porter, who is the Food Hub Network Manager for New Hampshire. She's not here today because she's representing New Hampshire in a regional conversation about food hubs, working with the other states and their food hub network. So that's super exciting. And I think, again, more related work that she'll be able to bring back and really, enliven our food hub network here and provide some learning opportunities. So a little bit about the Food Hub Network. For those who may not be super familiar with food hubs, essentially a food hub it could be many different things. It can kind of take shape in many different ways, but the core reason to have a food hub is to create a viable sales outlet for many different local food producers and farmers in an area. Whether it's statewide or in a region of the state, that's kind of their overall goal. And they deal with things like aggregation and storage, processing, distribution, and as well as like the marketing of these locally produced foods. So right now there are 6 food hubs that are operating in New Hampshire. They are part of this New Hampshire Food Hub Network. And they're, again, actively working together amongst each other to create distribution efficiencies, be able to reach more parts of the state, because all of them kind of are located in different areas that they focus on. And they also want to be able to diversify the offerings that each one of them offers. So, for example, getting seafood from the seacoast up to the North Country. That's kind of what the Food Hub Network is hoping to do, is kind of bring those products from different parts of the state to each other, more access. As I said, there's 6 food hubs. I'm going to talk about 3 today that have the ability for school to deliver wholesale orders to schools. But there are 2 retail-based food hubs that you should just be aware about because they're great. Kearsarge Food Hub and Taproot. Taproot's up in the North Country in Lancaster, and Kearsarge Food Hub is out of Bradford. They are, although they cannot deliver wholesale orders to schools, they are a vibrant part of this network and provide that ability to make connections with other local producers that the other hubs may not have relationships with. So although they are not in that category, they're still a very important part of this kind of ecosystem and network. The other 3 food hubs that we'll talk about today, they're distribution-based food hubs. It's Fresh Start Farms based out of Manchester, Food Connects based out of Keene and / Brattleboro, Vermont. They're kind of on that border area. And then Three River Farmers Alliance, which is based out of Fremont, the Seacoast area. And Stacey just moved us to the next slide, which is great. Those are the service areas, the distribution areas for those 3 hubs. As you see, Fresh Start Farms and Three Rivers kind of overlap in that center part of the state. And Three Rivers and Food Connects are kind of battling it out for their biggest territories, but they kind of obviously cover different parts of the region and go well beyond the borders of the state, which is, again, that bringing that regional component in is really kind of an exciting way for us to work well with our neighbors and really create a more vibrant food shed for all the food hubs. So I think you can go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about offerings. So as I said, food hubs, they're aggregators. They bring together all different types of food from all different local producers, producers that produce many different types of fruits and vegetables, or some that just produce maple syrup or honey. That's their goal, is to kind of bring in the largest amount of different types of offerings that they can. And all of these products are very traceable back to the farm and the food producer that created them. A lot of the interfaces that these hubs use online, as you'll see those two photos down below, are pictures of the produce, pictures of the people who produce them, lots of information about what to expect from that product. So there's no shortage of information. All three food hubs, Fresh Start, Food Connects, and Three Rivers, are really diligent about making sure that they understand all the quality and all of the ins and the outs of how the food's being grown and processed and handled and arriving at your cafeteria or your school. Some of the products I know that are interest, leafy greens, fruits, potatoes, maple syrup, honey, beef, and even, as Stacey mentioned, lightly processed veggies are all things that these food hubs can provide and create a relationship for you through the producers that they have relationships with at the hub. So if you need it, they can probably find it and get it to you. So one other thing that's kind of, I think, comes up a lot with the Food Hub Network and the farmers that they work with is, as we know, winter in New Hampshire and winter in New England, there's always the thought process, there's not a lot going on, there's not a lot growing, but it's a great time. And I think, again, it goes back to the Cooperative Agreement program. It's a great time to think about what you will need for that upcoming school year, planning for these farmers to buy their seeds and grow things that you really need. Say you really need a bunch of potatoes, talking with the Food Hub Network, talking with Caitlin, she can, reach out to the hubs and say, hey, which one of your farmers are really interested in growing potatoes? Like, I have a school who needs, 200 pounds of potatoes for next school year. And, that's the kind of thing that Caitlin is very happy to do and very happy to take on, that kind of connection and relationship building between a school and a hub, and the hub taking it and creating that relationship with the farmers. So, and it's kind of benefits everybody. It helps you in your planning as you plan for the school year and plan your menus and all those kind of details. And it also helps the farmer get some money up front and not feel like, okay, I'm going to have all these potatoes and hopefully they end up buying them. It's kind of a done deal that really provides resilience for everybody all the way around. So that's something to really be thoughtful about and think about. And if you have questions, Caitlin is the person to go to about all that forward contracting and crop planning information. I think you can go to the last slide, which is just some resources. As I said, Caitlin is the Food Hub Network coordinator. I'm going to put some stuff in the chat, some information, her contact information, as well as the webpage to the Food Hub Network website. And she also sent me a video, which I think is pretty cool, of the Three River Farmers Alliance website. It kind of goes through to show you how to order on their platform. We're not going to go through that now. So if you want to watch that in your spare time, I think it's definitely worth it if it's new to you. But that's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions to the best of my ability or bring them to Caitlin and get you an answer as soon as possible. But that's the Food Hub Network in a little nutshell.
Thank you, Colleen. Anybody have any questions? All right, I'm just going to stop share there. All right, let's move on to Jeanne and just hear from a school food service director who's been doing farm to school for a while about how she approaches it.
Hello, so in schools, I do the Exeter School District and I do the Cooperative School District. So I have 4 different buildings that I service. And really, when you want to start a relationship, you want to start it small with the farmer so that you are able to both have trust and confidence in the relationship, in the needs that you will need as a school. And also for schools, it's about budgeting. So you need to look at all that. And the way I started is that way. Before even Three Rivers was around, it was going to the individual farmer and having that conversation. And learning too, for me, it wasn't about them servicing the whole menu, but start again small. And most schools have like a salad bar, or they can add vegetables or the fruit, and really starting that way and ensuring that you ask, what do they have excess of if they're not growing it? Because farmers have to deal with Mother Nature. And if it's an extremely hot summer, dry summer, they're not going to have the product. So for us, we have to be a little flexible. We have to be understanding. They deal with the supply chain issue in a different way because theirs is grown. And really, in school budgets, set aside funds to purchase locally and think outside the box. Both Colleen and Stacey have said, you know, proteins, maple syrup, honey, vegetables, fruit. So really think that way. And so that's how I started. You know, I look at buying not the whole cow, because I can't use those expensive pieces of meat. I'm not going to use a prime. I'm not going to use the tenderloin, but I will use anything else they can make into ground beef. And you don't need a beef cattle. You can go and look at a dairy farm that have cows that just aren't producing, and they bring them to slaughter. And you have that conversation with the farmer, and they'll pack it usually in 10 pounds. They're very flexible. It's really come a long way in the beef. You can have conversations about having them make burgers for you and think about the shrinkage so that you look at, you know, not a 2-ounce burger, but like a 3.2 ounce. Ask them how they pack it, delivery, and start the relationship there. Maybe not look at doing, if you have multiple buildings, don't look at doing all your buildings at once. Pick one building, start slow, and build a relationship. Also look at seasons. Every August, I work with a farmer up in Alton, New Hampshire, Taylor Brown Farm, for blueberries. I load up my car and I take about 2 or 3 trips. I have a little car, but I take the trips, I throw them in my freezer, and I have the blueberries almost all year. It might be a little more money, but the quality of the blueberry is very different. It's excellent. I'm right now looking to try to buy local ground beef hamburgers. I just bought from a farmer ground beef. I have it. I will not mix my product lines. So that's something a lot of schools have to realize. If you're purchasing from farmers, you have to have trace back. So don't mix your farm ground beef with maybe your commodity ground beef, or you have to purchase ground beef. You really need to keep them separate so you have that trace back in case anything ever was to happen. Same thing, you know, it's a good way to get kids to try funky vegetables. A lot of our farmers in the state grow unique vegetables that our kids have never tried. one of the biggest hit was watermelon radish. The kids went crazy for it because when they saw it, we cut it in a triangle, so that was a lot of work, but the color looked kind of like a watermelon in a way. They tried it, so we just took a separate pan. We advertised, because you need to advertise as best you can local, and that day you need to say who the farmer is. You might be able to, depending on the time of year, the season, bring a local farmer in, or a fisherman. I mean, I've done local fish. I've had my aha moments that I will never get the little shrimp. I bought a ton of that one year thinking it was awesome, and I didn't know they were like poppers. And I had to pop the heads and devein them. It was a very good learning lesson. I also learned that my staff does not have the ability to buy, I can't buy whole fish, because I had fish stew by the time they were finished learning how to cut it. So sometimes it's better to have the fisher man or woman fillet the fish for you. But it's local. I did have the captain come in from the boat, talk to my kids. He had his gear, what he wears on the boat. The kids loved it. The administration of the building loved it, because none of them really met a fisherman. It was a fisherman. They never met one, and he told his story, and it was a great education lesson to know where the food came from. And your community appreciates it. But look at the seasons. I really look at the seasons, and winter, you still have a lot of choice in winter. A lot of people don't think we do, but depending on the farmer, they might do hoop houses, so you can get curly kale. Potatoes, they put in root cellars, so you've got potatoes, you've got some squashes, you've got carrots. Apples, depending on the vendor and their storage, you can get local apples year round. So really understand the seasons and have them start small. That's the best advice I can give you. And for those schools that are very lucky to get this grant money, you can, if you have the storage space, look, we're in maple syrup season. We're about to go full blown into that. Look at those farmers, and maybe you could, do a pancake day or French toast, but you could not just do it in March. You could do a kickoff in when the school year starts, but buy it now. It's shelf stable. You can look at beef. You can freeze it, keep it in your freezer, and you'll have it for next year, or you buy it in September. So really look at those ways of spending the protein, especially where our commodity market from the government, we're not getting a lot of items. So you have that ability to get locally sourced. The quality is nice, and you might be shocked that the pricing is completely competitive with your main vendor. And don't be afraid to have that conversation that the potato might be dirty. So you would write the spec and that you need it washed. But again, you're gonna have to rewash it. So the carrots, if they just pull them out of the ground, you do not have to peel them. You just have to wash them and bite them and enjoy them. You can also ask them to keep some of the greens so the kids can see the whole carrot with the greens. Some kids have never seen that. So again, it's an educational lesson for our kids. But it's a process. During COVID, it fell apart for me. I'm in the process of rebuilding the relationship with the farmers. But I never go big. I've learned they can't handle it. New Hampshire's farmers are in high demand in the retail market and in restaurants. So I don't ask for 300 pounds of like strawberries. I'm not going to get them. I know that. So when you have your conversation, ask what they can do and work that way. It's definitely a learning, and once you get it, it's great, and you see the difference. You do see the difference in the food. You're helping the farmers, and your kids are learning. The best thing is the kids learn about local food, and they might grow it in the classroom, extend that way. But there's a lot of produce in New Hampshire. We don't think there is, but there is. So if you just go on some of the hub websites, you'll be shocked. All the different product lines they do have. But that's my little gig on using it in schools. If anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Jean. I have a question. Why do you do all this?
For a couple of reasons. One is my consumer, my kids, my community wants it, but also our kids need to know where our food comes from. They've lost that connectivity because everything's packaged, everything is coming from the store. They don't know where it comes from. They don't have that relationship to farm to table. You were a huge resource for me when I started, because I didn't know my way around all the lingo of farming. I don't have a green thumb to me. I reached out to UNH master gardeners or community members that knew how to do it. They wanted to start, probably, I don't know, now I'm gonna over 10 years ago, they wanted to do a school garden. They came to me and I'm like the wrong person. I have no gardening skills. And it was, I say I will go on the bus and be a passenger, but I can't drive the bus because I didn't understand anything. I've learned a lot over the years. I understand what I think it's called, I don't know, the crop with something they put over the dirt and it grows grass-like or whatever. See, I don't even know. I don't remember. So my knowledge.
Cover crop.
There you go. Right. And I'm, they're looking at me and I have no clue what they're talking about. It went way over my head. I don't understand. It's a whole specialty. So schools reach out to those in the community. You have volunteers that want to help you, and nothing is better than either the students taking part in things, do a try it day. So if you're unsure of what to look for local farm items, just buy enough to do a try it day, and they just get 1 bite or 2 bites of the item. And that wouldn't be with the protein, that would be more with your vegetables and unique vegetables to our state. The kids will enjoy it. It is, my staff enjoys it. I mean, it is a little more work, I won't lie, when you do have to use some of the whole vegetables and cut it, but like I said, the carrots, you just wash them and you eat them right away. There's no peeling, and people think you have to peel, but you don't. And I mean, there is still that push in my community that want the farm to table, and we just try to do a good balancing act. But you got to market it, and most of us in school meals are very bad at marketing that. I'm right there with everyone. I don't market it as well. I do my best. So market it, let them know, put it on your menu. My goal by the end of the year is to have a little farm to who the ingredients come from, the local farm, so that it will be like Three Rivers or Brookford Farms. I've used them a lot, and they've helped. So when they were starting out, they helped me a lot. So it's really the communication, the relationship with the farmers, and then your parents have confidence. Plus, there's no chemicals. Your food is cleaner, it's fresher, and you're serving the community. So the money goes back into the community, and I think that helps our state as a whole.
Yeah, thanks, Jean. yeah, as Jean said, it's been a long journey. I think I was right there with you.
You were.
We're there helping to put those garden beds in. So,
And they're still there. They just rebuilt them. So
oh, great.
yeah, so we still have that. And then I do have, at my high school, we have inside gardens where we do our herbs. So
Mhm.
that's another area I didn't even say. You can get herbs from your local farmers and add that to the food, which will give a nice flavor. So for directors, think about your menu, think about your budget, and then realize local farmers aren't out of our price range. Pick something like an apple and start with that, and then get that comfort. It's you as a director have to get comfortable with what you're using. And once you do, you might you'll get out of your comfort zone and add more. So hopefully the bill will pass so I can get $1,200. But money's money in school lunch. So,
Oh, yeah, that's a tough place to be when it comes to money. So thank you, Jean. That was very inspiring and one of the farm to school champions in the state. So Jean did talk about marketing. So, we have the New Hampshire Harvest of the Month program and we're revising that. We're going to be adding to it. So there's going to be multiple choices every month. We're adding proteins, we're adding other kinds of foods to it, increasing the options. So if you need some marketing materials, you can, that's something that's easy to adapt and it's going to be all available for free. If you want to serve any of those foods. But yeah, so when you're marketing it, Jean, like what are the ways? Are you putting signage in the cafeteria? Is it going e-news? How does it get
basically
out?
on
Get
the
word out?
menu. Basically, I do it on the menu that goes up that the parents see. And then like I'm hoping to get my hamburgers for next month. But so it doesn't say local because I'm not sure if I will get it because I'm still in conversation to get the size burger I want. So for safety factors, I don't say it. But if it does happen, I will take down the menu and put the new one up that says locally sourced. I will also, when the kids come in, it's announced. We do menu announcements every day, and then they hopefully listen and understand it is local. But yeah, that's the way we do it. It's also, I really want to try to get on the website, but that's not a priority on the list right now. But it's on the list that I want more of that to let parents know because they don't. And I know they don't because I haven't done it. It sounds crazy, but just adding the word local, sometimes you just forget, you get in a rhythm and you're writing 3 or 4 menus every month. You just lose sight of that little thing that makes a difference. It does make a difference. And as we become more diverse in our communities, with culture, you want to use some of these unique vegetables that are being grown because it will add a different flavor to our dishes.
Yeah, so in the new New Hampshire Harvest of the Month, we'll be incorporating some cultural diversity into the program materials. So you'll have that as well to use. So Rebecca wants to know, as a food service director, is there any reporting or metrics you have to report to the school board or principal?
No, I'm kind of a little lucky. I'm kind of left alone. Is the best way to put it. They just let me do my thing. So I do let them know through purchases now. I'm with school boards. I'm starting to report to my boss that I'm trying to do that. I actually have a file now. Anything I buy from a farm just goes into the farm file. So I'm keeping track. Instead of by vendor, it's by farm. It's a farm purchase. And then I will be able to report out that I've spent X amount of dollars on locally sourced food. Because I am getting a demand for that from people on my wellness committee. And at the same time, I let them know, this is what it costs. So it's twofold. I educate them on the cost of the food and the total plate cost, because it's important they understand that. But if you use your government commodities to the best of your advantage, you can do a center of a plate with local stuff. You just surround everything else on that menu for that day with commodities. So all of us directors have DOD money, which is fresh produce. So if you use the fruit and the vegetable, you can't sub the milk. But there is a director is buying I'll call it the bag of milk. I don't know what else, and the kids pour the milk themselves. So she's getting locally sourced milk from a farm. But if you look at, know the cost so that you can serve this item, you can serve fresh fish. And two, if you don't have someone with good culinary skills, and you want to do like a fish taco, instead of doing the breaded fish sticks, you could look at red fish, which is small and thin, season it with the taco seasoning, and then put it in the tortilla, and then make a nice, you could get fancy depending on your skill level. And that's part of the problem with a lot of school directors, is the talent of the staff, the equipment in the kitchens. I'm blessed. I have a good culinary background, and I do have a chef. So that does help at my high school level to go a little way out of the box. And, at the elementary level, you got to think of those kids' palate, their fear factor, because if it's not something that looks right, they're not going to eat it. So you just got to know your customer, and don't think the whole meal has to be the farm item. So you could do, breadstick fish tacos that a lot of schools do. And I don't know why I'm picking on that. And then you could buy a small quantity of the red fish and have that, and let the kids choose, empower them, or just have it there and let them sample it. So it's a little extra cost, but remember, they only get one meal a day. The parents, most of them will let them, if they're free and reduced, they don't have the funds to buy the meal, or they have limited funds and they're going to buy something they know they like. So it's important that, you let them try it. I know it's a little expense, but especially the schools that are getting this grant money, look at it that way, that you can open the doors to these kids' eyes, because you are high free and reduced schools. So that means they might not experience some of these foods because it's not within their financial sometimes, or the parents' culinary skills aren't there. So if you're able to do that within your buildings, your kitchens, do it. Our kids do know quality food. Our kids will experiment with food, as long as they know they can get the meal they like. So you got to think that way and make it fun. I do try it days. We haven't got back to that because we're still coming out of the whole eating in the classroom at the elementary. My staff does not do try it days. My PTO does it. The parents do it, because they know the parents and they trust them. They trust those mom and dads. So bring in the farm stuff. If you can make your farmer, if you can get a farmer to come in, schedule it, and, do meet the farmer, and they'll come in, and, they like kids. So just take it step by step and don't set your goals super high. And you report that in a report, you know, I don't know if you do a monthly report, a bi-monthly report, whatever, just report it out to your school boards. Or do it through the wellness committee and then have it in the minutes of the wellness. How, for us, we have multiple school boards in SAU 16. So the wellness committee is kind of the best way to get information out there, because each school does whatever they want and there's no central. So each director within SAU 16 can do what they want when it comes, and each school board has their own opinion of farm to table. It's the best way to put it.
That's nice.
I have a question for Stacey and or Jeanne. I feel like it was brought up a couple times just about the skills of the staff and in your schools, and or you know, just tools and things you have. Is there like resources through the various kind of organizations and nonprofits that we work with Farm to School that have good resources for building skills with your staff, kitchen skills? Or no?
I can answer a lot. So there are, through the School Nutrition Association at the conferences, they're able to do training. So directors might want to ask if they will do certain training. Directors can network together or even ask some of the local restaurants if they will come in. If there's a vocational school, which we all know they're vocational schools, will that culinary educator maybe come and hold a class for your staff? It's those basic knife skills. There's grant equipment money out there right now. So one of the obstacles for a lot of schools is knife skills, the cutting, the shredding. So purchasing a RoboCoupe, but nobody might not know how to put it together. It's a great piece of equipment. It's hardy. It's very hard to destroy. And, they could get one of those and for probably under $1,000. I don't know what they go for now, but,
They're expensive.
but you need the tools. That's why I say start simple and have that. You might have a parent. I mean, I've had a couple of parents who are chefs and they've come and done classes through their whoever they purchase through, whether it be Cisco, PFG, Gordon's, Thurston's, whoever their main vendor is, might very well have a chef on the payroll, or some of the product lines they use probably have a corporate chef. And if they're local, they might come into your building, or if you set up a bunch of schools and give you skills. Simple
Yeah.
stuff sometimes. So you just have to seek them out. And again, it's work on the director, and with the labor shortage, it's a lot more on the director. So they're trying to feed the kids, do their paperwork, because we've got a lot of government reporting. And but I would look to parents. I mean, I'm always like, if there's a parent that wants to do something for me, or if there's an intern, I mean, they might be able to find an intern, or if there's a high school kid that wants to take on a project, there's always those kids that want to do good in the district. Give them a little task. Look at the student government within the buildings, and just put it out there to the PTO. You have to communicate your needs. And if you don't communicate it, nobody knows you need help. It's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I've done some of that work with school food service
Yeah.
folks. We were doing it in Nashua because I had a big farm to school project going on there. So we engaged their culinary program there, who's got like the biggest kitchen ever. And we did some knife skills and cooking classes with the Nashua School Food Service, and I've done that in Manchester as well. I used to do it around the state. We did some cooking with local foods. I engaged, high school culinary programs to be the places where school food service could come, and we would do a bunch of different recipes, like let's make kale salad, or, let's learn how to practice using a chef's knife or how to sharpen a chef's knife, because a lot of times you'll see them in the kitchen with a paring knife, like, no wonder we can't do this, because it's going to take you 3 hours to get through those carrots with your paring knife. So we could go back to that. There was some effort that Department of Ed Nutrition Services was working with the food bank to offer a culinary boot camp for school food service. And I think that was waylaid with COVID, because of COVID. So, I mean, that's another good place where, they have a nice kitchen over at the food bank. And so there's lots of opportunities. Again, local chefs coming in. I know that there's a chef in Portsmouth. He's working with some of the schools in York and Kittery, because that's where he lives, and going in and helping them like do farm to school stuff and different menu items. So there are definitely opportunities. You just have to go find them. All right. Well, maybe we'll stop here unless anybody has any final questions, but this has been recorded and will be available on the Farm to School website, and we will be sending it out along with some of the other resources we talked about to everybody that registered. Yeah, so any final questions? Otherwise, we're gonna wrap up.
Hi, Stacey. This is Tomas Delgado with
Hi,
National
Tomas.
School Network. I'm based in Illinois, so it's been a treat to hear about the farm to school efforts in New Hampshire. I had one question for Colleen, kind of a broader question, but are some of the food hubs that are participating in school markets, do you know if they're requiring any kind of certifications like certifications for the producers that they engage with? I mean, I'd imagine that a lot of New Hampshire producers are GAP certified, but here in the Midwest, it's a little less accessible for a lot of producers, and it's become a pretty big barrier for producers to engage with any kind of distributor or aggregator that's already engaged with school markets. And yeah, I was hoping to get a sense if that's maybe something more regionally specific here in the Midwest, or if other states are sort of navigating that in different ways.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will speak with 99% certainty that the big hubs that I referenced, Fresh Start Farms, Food Connects, and Three Rivers Farmers Alliance, they require the farms that they work with to have that GAP certification, or they don't require it. I thought, no, okay. So there's the 1%, but I know that some of them do, or they work towards having some sort of traceability. And I know that's very important. At least I know it's a very important skill that's being built up within the Food Hub network, and it's something that Caitlin is trying to get all the food hubs kind of on the same page of like
Yeah.
who has what certifications and can offer services based on those certifications.
I think a lot of it has to do with the market for the food, that schools don't require GAP certification, restaurants aren't requiring GAP certification. And even some of the other institutional buyers aren't requiring it. So if our farms are selling to certain supermarkets, they might require it. So a farm might get GAP certified because the customer wants them to be GAP
Right.
certified. But since most of the customers in the state aren't requiring it, that a lot of farms are not GAP certified. We only have, I don't know, I haven't looked lately, but there's only like 12 or 15 farms in the state that have a GAP certification.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so here in Illinois, and I think within this region, it's really we're really distributor heavy, and those distributors are really requiring the certifications, for their own liability. It's not on behalf of the institutions that they're selling to or any other markets that they're selling to, but it's proven to be a really significant barrier for any kind of emergent producer who would like to sell to schools in their community, because we don't have a good landscape of food hubs in most of the Midwest. I mean, with the exception of Minnesota and to some degree Michigan, but in Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, it's not really the case. So your options are either directly to the institution or through distributors, which are requiring that certification. So I'm hoping to just get a good sense of like how the landscapes are in other regions, just to kind of look to see if there's any kind of trends nationally with this. So
Yeah. So Donna, where are you out of? Donna said she's been told that she's required to be certified, so I'm not sure.
Sorry
There you
about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let me straighten out my wiring here just a second.
Yeah, I mean, there's other food safety things
Okay.
going on that aren't related, like Food Safety Modernization Act and things like that, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to get GAP certified.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to be a Donna Downer. But I do apologize if it seems that way, but that's not my goal here. I just think that it would be good at this stage to have the food hub system try to get better. I mean, if that's the way it's all going to go, to try to get better with either onboarding emerging farmers, as Tomas said, or trying to honor local that are really local to the school districts, to make it a priority to be able to source food from them if those producers are able. I was trying to work with, I think it was Food Connects, and was told that I think I needed caps or something of that level. However, I guess I would just be interested to see a little bit more alternatives, if possible, to the food traceability issue, because it's pretty easy to trace where a tainted product came from if it's super local, is one point I'd like to make. I would just like to see it not, this whole effort not put up too many barriers to people producing on a very local level. So
Yeah,
that's-
I don't know. I know the Food
my
Hub
opinion.
Network has a food safety group or discussions. I haven't been participating in those, so I don't know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But I know they're talking about it.
The goal of that group is, I think, to, like I was saying earlier, to get aligned. So the food hubs and the farms that they represent to just all be on a similar page in terms of traceability and expectations for products, and if something does go wrong, what's going to happen, and just getting those rules lined out so that if something goes wrong, like to know the process and to just have like a good way to handle it. And to have like a standard. So like when a school does come to the Food Hub Network and deals with the Food Hub, that and the farms that they represent, to know what they're going to get, know the standard of the product that they're going to get, just have it to be a little bit more consistent.
Mhm.
So I think they're working towards that, and it's by no means to create a barrier, it's just to create some consistency for customers, I think is the
Yeah.
goal.
I guess I would just interject that a kind of maybe equitable thing to do might be when you are contacted by a food director, for example, that they might consider scoping out what farms are immediately in that area, and contact them and consider trying to work them in, because if Food Connects is going to deliver 600 pounds of potatoes that I could have been easily dropping, selling to this school district, well, then that market's out, because I don't have an in with the food hub yet, and they're so busy. I totally get that, they're understaffed, and like practically everybody nowadays, but even more so because it's not a big profit margin there. I understand that's difficult, but it's just an idea I'd like to interject, because I think it would also help them build out real food security, because as we've all seen disasters occurring, my favorite example is the last cold snap we had. I happened to go into Shaw's a few days later, and there was like all kinds of basic staple stuff just not there. And I said, what's going on? And they said none of their trucks would start, so they couldn't get the food out to all their supermarkets.
Mm.
And so that's the kind of thing I'm saying. It's like, it wouldn't be mission impossible in an emergency in a community if you keep these super local people supported, that they can be there in really difficult times. So I think you get my drift, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah,
I'd
definitely.
recommend that, I mean, if farmers can contact us, the directors, and start that relationship that way too. It's because just like and the timing is when we're busy, the farmers aren't busy during the day, and so our timing is an issue to communicate with the farmers. But local farmers should think about setting up an appointment with the director and coming in and introducing themselves and saying what they can do if they're not part, because they know where their schools are if they're farming in the community. They know their capability, their product line, and there are new directors always revolving through the door. We're an aging population of school food service directors, so you get new ones in, and it's probably the last thing on their mind is a farm. So, if you reach out and just say, hey, I have excess potatoes, I can sell, know your price, what you can sell them to them at, because, and let them know, bring in a couple of potatoes so they can see what they look like. And you might be surprised how open they are to it.
Yeah, I mean, schools can buy directly from farms, and they've done that
Yeah.
for years, because we didn't
Yeah.
always have food hubs.
No,
Yeah.
we didn't.
So, if you want local farm food, you're going to have to go talk to the farmer. And that's can be a challenge. It's easier for the farmers to sell through a food hub because they don't have to do the distribution and marketing.
Yeah.
But some of them do. They will sell stuff to you and drive it to your school.
Yeah.
So it's not, if you're struggling to get in with the food hub, Donna, I mean, you still have other direct markets or direct ways that you can reach some school customers.